Joe's Inner Child Podcast.
So I spoke already with Ry and Joanna. I'm not sure how it's pronounced.
Joanna.
That's what I thought. Okay, so I spoke with both of them, so I'm kind of excited to get your specific take on this. From what I understand, was this shot at your house?
It was shot at my apartment. That's correct.
So can you explain to
It,
me, was that initially the plan?
well, there was no plan going into this movie, period. I was actually working on another film, trying to get it off the ground called Jane. And then the lockdown started. And, I kind of went through and see if I could corona proof Jane, so I could uh, find the money for that one. And it was just with the restrictions and all that, it just seemed too difficult. So I think I lasted about a week, and then I came up with an idea. So I called Ry, asked him if I wrote you something, are you in? He goes, absolutely. So, and I remember Joanna came out for an audition for something else. So before I even wrote anything, I went through some old files and found, and I think I ended up tracking Joanna down. She just stood out in my head from another edition. I ended up finding like some social media, and I bombarded that with messages. She finally got back to me, and I said, okay, I'm doing this thing. Uh, Ry Barrett's going to be in it. If I write this, are you interested? She said, absolutely. So after that, I called my crew. Yeah, they're all in. Just the base. And then I started writing. And I think I pulled the script out in about a week and a half.
So when it comes to the actual writing, it doesn't it seems like it's the opposite for you. You didn't really have any writer's block when it came to putting the story together.
Oh no, because the movie's kind of about writer's block to a certain
Exactly.
degree. So it's a little semi-autobiographical, I would guess. There are elements, but it was just I just knew what I had access to, what would be easiest to shoot. With basically a five-person crew. My sound guy never even came into the apartment. He mixed from the van. We ran cables in, and then all of us kind of moved his boom stands, and the actors did all their own labs. So we just knew, and I had very little time to raise money. Raised and went to a few key people, raised a little bit of money, and we were shooting in no time.
So then I think they said you had, like you said, you had pretty much a skeleton crew. But as far as like the cat goes, is that your actual cat, or did you have to
That
cast
is
the
my
cat?
actual cat. Yes,
What's the
I was
cat's name?
after Mushu, but everybody calls her Boosh Boosh. So it's just she was kind of our mascot for the whole thing, and I was scared to write her in, but you know what? I said, well, we can always bail on these scenes if it doesn't. And it was much easier than I thought. So, but
Nice.
I'm glad she stayed in the film.
Nice. So when you had started writing this, then I know you kind of told me about how it all came together and then you hammered out the script. When you hammered out the script, did you already know you were going to be filming it in your apartment in that hallway?
No, I was actually trying to find someplace else, and it just nothing. I had a place, kind of some. Like, it moved so fast, but everybody was skittish about having anybody around because that was March 2020, like right when nobody really knew what was going on. Like the element of fear, not like this, today. The element of fear was still very high then. So we kind of had to treat it like, okay, we're just going to basically lock down together, you know, do all the safety precautions because the best thing that can happen when we're done is everybody walks out and nobody got sick. So it was out of necessity basically. So
Well, I think that worked out pretty great. It seems like I think when Rye was talking about it, he said it was super convenient. You guys just kind of. I think he said he stayed there for a couple weeks. So was the extensive or the shooting? Um, was it the shooting shorter than the actual post production?
oh, by far the shooting, I think we shot in 17 days. And then I think one pickup day. But it like shooting, well, for me, I had to live. There's some scenes where there's equipment everywhere, so like everybody else got to go back to their place or their Airbnb, and I had to live on set. That was a little bit hard to getting up and tripping over stuff first thing in the morning before I had any coffee. But it had its advantages and disadvantages, so it was just like we weren't rushed. We could go as long as we wanted, start early, start late, because we had just, it was, full control over basically the set.
So when you had filmed it and you filmed with only a couple of characters. Is this your first time working with such a minimalist cast?
Uh, no, yeah, maybe on such a intimate level, it definitely was. Like, there are more than two characters, but the vast majority of it is just Ry and Joanna. So that, but I kind of liked it because on Kingdom Come, I had, I think, in any given scene, up to 8 or 9 people, which, as far as coverage goes, that proved to be, what, was, 2 pages of script. Took a whole day because you had to get coverage on 8 people. With only 2 people, you could actually take the time, okay, time is on our side, so let's set up the track and dolly for the shots. Let's set up the sliders for these shots. Where a lot of times when you're crunched for time because you're working with a bunch of people, the first thing to go is the bells and whistles. So it's just like, it was nice to actually go, hey, we have time. Let's take the time to set up the tracks and dolly, and just on this shot, let's just get some nice movement on it. That I really enjoyed. I don't think I could ever go back. Like, it just makes such a difference. Oh, so there was like all the basically, we were, in a nutshell, like, was the tough thing. We all wore so many hats. Like, talent did their own makeup. That was just, cause we had to keep every kind of it maintained that there was no more than 5 people kind of in the apartment at any given time. So uh some of the things required, a little bit more heavy, more special effectsy makeup, so that was kind of just to keep things down. I knew what I wanted to do since I was 7, so I know how to do a lot of things. I wore a lot of hats in this, and one of those happens to be, visual effects makeup. So as far as, anything like that, like, we just didn't have, the capabilities of introducing somebody else new into it, because anybody we brought in, even if we just need them for a day, that's kind of introduced. And like I said, like at the beginning of this, nobody kind of really know how bad this thing was, and introducing somebody else into it, I just thought, that at this point it's kind of dumb. So between all of us, and we all did many, 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 many things. So, and that was just happened to be, if it was visual effects makeup, I was the lucky guy that got to do it.
So I know you said you were working on a project called Jane, and you
Yeah.
kind of switched to this one because it was more possible to make at the time. Were
Yeah.
there any elements of the other story, Jane, that ended up kind of influencing Open Your Eyes, or even making it into the story?
No, there was no, not really, because that one's kind of about the whole, not directly, but similar, like the Jeffrey Epstein kind of sort of thing.
I got you.
Um, so this was pure out of, I'm a firm believer, if you're not creating, you're dying. And that's kind of how I started feeling. So I think, and if I have an ending, I can write pretty fast. So when I did come up with the ending for this, and I've been doing this probably now for 15 years, I will not start a script till I have an ending. I am not a writer that can actually, okay, I'm going to start here and go. I can do it, but it's going to be a 300-page script. So once I have that ending, sometimes, a lot of times I'll have the beginning as well. I need to know where I'm going. And because I want the ending to be strong. So if I have a good, strong ending, I can work my way backwards from that. And that's what I found I'm most effective and in conveying a story, because writing is very daunting to me. It's not one of my most enjoyable things to do, because I gotta, like, for some of the stuff I write, I go into really dark places, and I don't like staying there too long. That makes sense.
Yeah, and you write, you direct, you produce, like you said, you wear a lot of hats. Do you
Yeah.
feel, what are you most comfortable with, or like what do you like the most? Is it the directing aspect?
The Yeah, so I guess it would be the directing, but it's more just about the production part of it, like actually making the thing. I do a lot in the post end of it as well, but where I just love to be is on set creating, because I love I give the actors and the crew, because there's no gag order on anybody. Here's the framework, and I encourage anybody that, what, this may have sounded great coming out of my mouth, but it may not sound right coming out of your mouth. So by all means, let's, what's going to sound the best. Like it's most of my scripts, there's no wishy-washy things in it. Everything's detailed. It's just what I like, what actors bring, some of the creative crew bring. If there's a better way to do something and it's going to be more effective, I'm the first one jumping on board, raising my hand. So
Nice. And Ry had told me that, there was a lot of angles to make the hallway look bigger than it was. Is
yeah.
that something that you had to approach differently than you have with any of your previous projects, or is that something that you took with you from something that you had worked on in the past?
Well, it's like I'm a big fan of The Shining, and there are homage kind of elements in it of that, and I just, we played around with the camera as far as how it, with the hallway, how it should be shot, and we just found, when things are kind of, because it's a screenwriter that's just kind of struggling with himself, so we thought that when Rye's character was like more level-headed and things seem to be going better, or not so strange, we would keep the camera kind of obviously use a very wider angle lens that I'm used to. But as things started going off kilter, we just like started dropping the camera and shooting more an upward angle, because that just gave the hallway just this creepy vibe. And then the carpet that was in it was just this nice red, patterned, which just instantly, the second we dropped that camera to that low angle, it was just like everybody just smiled, because, oh, look at the hotel in that hallway. I bet you it doesn't look like it. The hallway was maybe 4 feet wide, four and a half at most.
So you have obviously you have a lot of love for The Shining. And it's obvious in the movie, and you mentioned it yourself now. I'm curious if you were inspired by The Shining for this script, or was it something when you kind of looked and figured out your ending, you decided that Shining influences would fit really well with the story?
That kind of came into play, I think, after the script, when we were on set. It just, because everybody was kind of getting this vibe, and of course, Rye does a killer Jack Nicholson. So he would just, sometimes he would just, start a take and do the old eyebrow thing and do the Jack voice. And it was just like, it was the whole vibe of the thing. And I think people will see that kind of as the story unfolds, and, when everybody, when all the questions pop up. And then
Now,
we hopefully tie it up in a neat bow at the end for everyone.
yeah, and I think that it's definitely takes a lot of twists and turns that are a little unexpected. So I think people will probably dig it. I wanted to know, when I talked to Joanna, I think she said that you and Ry had worked together in the past.
Yes.
Can you tell me like what project you had worked together on? Had you directed him previously?
Yeah, he was in my Kingdom Come, which I think was released in 2014, and that was the one I'm referring to with the large cast. Like we had basically eight main characters. And it's basically the good versus evil story, and we were shooting in a abandoned mental institution. Uh, but I worked with them, and I just remember when we were all done, I was happy with everything. Never going to be completely happy, but I was happy with everything. But I just remember thinking about Rye and just loving his attitude on set, and just kicking myself in the butt almost, because I underutilized him, because there was just so much going on. Like with eight characters, you're following all these characters going off on their own. So this part of the movie's this part of the movie's got these guys in it. So it was kind of just like, oh, I still underutilized him, because he's just a fascinating actor to look at. You can just put a camera on him, and you can just see his mind turn. And that's kind of when I came up with the story. I had Mariah in mind. I'm just going, yeah, if anybody can, because like the first 30 minutes, he's the only actor in the whole thing. And that's a lot to throw on anybody. And I just thought Ry, just with what you can literally see what's turning inside of his head without him uttering a word. And I just find that fascinating when actors can do that.
I love this. So do you feel like you had to direct him a lot on how to present himself because he was the only one in the scene, or did it seem like he was really good at that and you just kind of went with it as he improvised, like his facial things and how he interacted with his environment when he was alone in his apartment?
I usually let actors. I love to find out what they after they read the script. So the first take is always there. Like I'm not giving. I kind of do a quick little rundown. Okay, this is the scene where he's this, and okay, maybe he's the scene before it. He's just had that incident, so he should be a little elevated, and then I'll let him go, and then he just does his thing, and then I'll come in after that take and just maybe do a tweak or two, maybe nothing at all. Let's do another take. Let's do that again. And no, he was heavily invested in the script because he knew, and we kept reminding him, the first half of the movie is riding on you, buddy. So no
Yeah,
pressure.
no, totally. He killed it though. I
Yeah.
want to know if there's anything I didn't touch on regarding Open Your Eyes that you'd like to share with fans.
Well, I'm just hoping, I'm just the one of the biggest challenges, and I found this in editing was, just the pacing of the first part because, okay, it is a writer. He was writing. There isn't a whole lot going on, so we did our best to kind of make that creative and believable that it's actually writing the script. That it's not just like two scenes and look, I'm done. So it was that keeping it interesting. So it is kind of a slow burn off the top, and we've always kind of all said that it's almost like two different movies. But everything that happens in that first part, that in that first half of the movie, it's all there for a reason. We cut that thing down with test audiences, 5 at a time, like just because of restrictions, but and just molded that everything that is in there, you can literally go back when you get to the end and go, yep, yep, yep. And I'm not comparing this to Sixth Sense, but that's what I really enjoyed about Sixth Sense. You could literally go back and you had to watch it again. Like go, oh yeah, like because these incidental things, like just mundane moments that you think are mundane, are really clues and huge. And this movie is just full of clues.
Yeah, 100%. Like when I had watched it the second time before talking to Joanna, I obviously had noticed a lot of things. But again, I don't want to give any spoilers. I do
It's
before
hard.
before I wrap, I always like to give people a platform to be able to plug anything that they'd like to say, anything that they may want to say that they didn't get a chance to, that people don't really ask them, or even just your social media. I always like to give people a second to do that before we wrap.
Yeah, all I can, yeah, not just if anybody's interested in finding out more, there's, matchboxpictures.ca is our website. And yeah, and I just hope people, watch the movie because I think, it's, kind of, it's hope, right? It's kind of at the end of the day, the movie is about hope. And, who can use that right now?
Literary Joe's Inner Child Podcast.